Welcome to the Explainer. Grab your wetsuit because today we're stepping right into our deep ocean, high-tech threat assessment lab. We're going to critically analyze the biomimetic structures of Web3. So let's dive right in. To really grasp what we're dealing with today, we've got to stop thinking of DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, as just flat, boring software artifacts. Instead, we need to look at them as multicellular legal organisms. Think about it. These are living, evolving legal animals interacting with external stimuli in the highly volatile waters of Web3. They span multiple legal environments and actually mimic biology to achieve resilience. But hey, just like anything in nature, they have natural predators and, of course, inherent weaknesses. Here's our agenda for today's diagnostic run. We'll start with the Threat Lab framework, check out Specimen 1, the Fish School, examine swarm vulnerabilities, then move on to Specimen 2, the Starfish, look at extreme decentralization risks, and wrap up with the DAO membrane. All right, Part 1, the Threat Lab framework, focusing on the DAO risk taxonomy. And this brings us to the Crypto Valley Association's proposed risk taxonomy for DAOs. What's really interesting here is how this framework beautifully maps out 9 distinct dimensions of risk. For our analysis today, we're going to focus heavily on how our biological models hold up against 3 specific areas: governance, operational, and strategic risks. By categorizing threats this way, we can see exactly where a biological architecture might just snap under pressure. And this gives us a totally crucial baseline for our threat lab. You see, the CVA research reminds us of classic agency theory. It's the idea that even in highly decentralized systems, the misalignment of incentives between actors remains a massive, fundamental predatory threat. This is absolutely crucial for anyone building in Web3 to remember. Look, just because an organization lacks a CEO doesn't mean it magically avoids conflicts of interest, trust issues, or the misuse of power. Keep all that in the back of your mind as we introduce our first living architecture. Moving on to Specimen 1. The Fish School, we're looking at rapid consensus in motion. Check out the bioluminescent scattering of this model. The Fish School DAO operates entirely without central leadership. There's no alpha fish barking orders here. Instead, its secret to cohesion is that each individual only really needs to coordinate with its immediate nearby neighbors. They rely entirely on local sensing, things like visual context and sudden shifts in water pressure to adapt. One fish turns, its neighbors turn, and boom. Suddenly, the whole school shifts in the blink of an eye. The mechanics of this swarm are entirely optimized for raw agility. This model prioritizes speed over bureaucracy, utilizing super rapid consensus mechanisms. The membership? Completely fluid. Members just come and go based on external triggers. It operates in what researchers call action time, which honestly is just a polite way of saying short, intense bursts of massive, panicked, coordinated action. Think of it like a rapid call to arms to instantly shift direction away from a threat, totally relying on a safety in numbers approach. Now, you might be wondering, how does a decentralized protocol actually code this kind of biological behavior? Well, it does it through a hat tree structure and protocol reflex agents. Essentially, individual roles are dynamically automated. When the water gets hot, these reflex agents allow the smart contracts to react instantly. This makes the entire school move as one synchronized entity, completely bypassing the need to wait for a slow, top-down management decision. Which brings us to swarm vulnerabilities, where we'll be applying the risk framework. And this brilliantly illustrates the core tension of the Fish School. The intended mechanism is rapid consensus and extreme fluidity. But according to the CVA taxonomy, the exact corresponding threat is operational coordination failure. You see, the chaos of local sensing is brilliant when it works, but if those signaling systems break down, that massive coordinated action we just talked about quickly devolves into systemic failure and total disarray. Let's put its highest exposures under the microscope. First up, voting apathy. Because this thing moves so incredibly fast, low participation can easily lead to a tiny group hijacking the direction of the entire school. Second, Sybil attacks. The highly fluid, anonymous membership base makes it incredibly vulnerable to malicious actors just spinning up fake identities to skew outcomes. And finally, pure coordination failures. The constant, high-alert yang energy of schooling leads to severe burnout. If the DAO doesn't intentionally plan for shoaling, a relaxed, yin energy state of resting and recharging, the swarm literally just exhausts itself and collapses. So let's switch gears a bit. We're going to contrast the chaotic, high-speed movement of the Fish School with the slow, methodical, glowing division of our next specimen. It takes a radically different evolutionary approach to survival. Section 4, Specimen 2, the Starfish.
We're talking extreme decentralization here.
Unlike the highly reactive swarm of the fish school, the starfish model is entirely brainless. It functions organically with zero central leadership. But its absolute superpower is its native, self-replicating capability. Think about it. If a starfish loses an arm, it doesn't just heal. That severed arm can sometimes grow into an entirely new starfish. It is literally the ultimate decentralized survivor.
The core philosophy of the starfish revolves around a very deliberate trade-off. It happily sacrifices the rapid, massive coordinated action we saw in the fish school. Instead, it prioritizes survival and ecological resilience through slower, highly resilient consensus and intelligent problem-solving loops. It doesn't want to outrun the predator, it just wants to ensure the species survives, even if a huge chunk of the network gets destroyed.
But that leads us into extreme decentralization risks. The real cost of having no brain. Here we see the inherent paradox of the starfish. The intended mechanisms are self-replication and extreme decentralization, but its corresponding taxonomy risks, strategic deadlocks, and forking. The very mechanism that's meant to ensure its unkillable survival makes the organism highly susceptible to completely paralyzing itself when a tough decision needs to be made, or worse, splitting its community entirely into competing factions. These are incredibly precise vulnerabilities. Because it has absolutely no central brain to force a direction, a starfish DAO frequently falls into strategic deadlocks. We're talking an absolute inability to move or decide. On top of that, its self-replication feature often manifests as forking, where the network aggressively splits, dividing resources and totally diluting the mission. And broadly speaking, it just suffers from massive operational inefficiencies. Slow consensus means it simply cannot react fast enough to rapid market shifts. Which brings us to our final section, the DAO membrane, containing the ecosystem. So the crucial takeaway from all of this is that biomimicry is not a magic bullet. You can't just copy a fish or a starfish and expect a flawless organization. These models absolutely require a protective layer, what researchers call a DAO membrane, to prevent complete fragmentation. This membrane is what ensures that all those decentralized cells remain securely anchored within a unified system of identity, governance constraints, and clear interaction rules. Ultimately, whether you engineer the fluid, chaotic speed of a fish school or the hyper-resilient, brainless decentralization of a starfish, structural vulnerabilities are always going to exist, and they absolutely must be mitigated. Without a coherent membrane defining the boundaries, a fish school just burns out from coordination failure, and a starfish completely paralyzes itself in a strategic deadlock. Which leaves us with the ultimate design challenge for anyone building in this space. As these ecosystems grow and face increasingly hostile environments, you really have to ask yourself, how will you engineer your DAO's membrane to survive the evolutionary pressures of Web3? Thank you for stepping into the lab with me today. Keep exploring, and I'll see you in the next explainer.